Let's go to the phones. Calling from an 817 area code. Who's this?
Hey, this is Dana from Dallas.
Hey, Dana. How are you? What's on your mind?
Good. I was just, I was listening to the drone discussion with Jeremy Scahill, and it struck me about the discussion about how largely the specs of this drone program are very similar to other types of strategic, I guess you could say, genocide. I mean, it really fits all the classical definitions of genocide. But the other countries carry out, even like you have a lot of people have talked about Assad and how he's been carrying out like genocide of his own people, and there was talk about how Saddam Hussein was gassing his own people, and but there the drone strikes sort of amount to that sort of thing, and we always talk about.
I mean, I gotta stop you there for a second, because I don't think I don't think our drone program, and I'm not saying from a moral standpoint that it's necessarily better, but I don't think our drone program is even remotely close to genocide. And when you're talking about a classical definition of genocide,
I personally think it is, and the only reason I say that is because we're going out and intentionally killing people en masse. And yeah, I mean, we're not like rounding up and sending them to gas camps is oftentimes considered for the classical example of genocide, but it's
genocide is mass murder, but it's not mass murder. I mean, we're not killing. I don't think there's anybody out there who makes the claim that we're killing tens of thousands of people, which is what we have seen, the Assad regime do, what we saw in in Kosovo, or I don't think that this is genocide. I don't think that's I don't even think that's what the critics would. I've never heard anybody who criticizes it as characterizing it in that way. I mean, it can still be bad without being genocide, and I don't think it helps to conflate those two things.
Well, maybe I could say it's like one step removed. I mean, would that be fair? A fair way to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's killing, and it's killing in a way that is indiscriminate in some respects. Maybe indiscriminate is even too strong of a word, but it is one where there is the real issue to me is, look, this is a foreign policy that we have. It is a war policy, if you will, that is not debated like war has been, and so there are issues that are not being debated in terms of its morality. There are issues that are not being debated in terms of its efficacy. And I think that is what is problematic. I mean, sadly, I think if the American public had all of the facts presented to them in the way that they're presented, let's say, about maybe if there was some way you could sneak Jeremy Scahill onto America Has Talent, and he had 5 minutes to sing, whatever it is that is going on with the drone project, I think the American public would say, I'm okay with that. As long as it's, and I say that with deep regret. However, I think there's also, I don't think the American public would have a problem with it morally. It's possible that maybe if there was a strong enough case that you people would, say, well, from an efficacy standpoint, that may not make any sense. Like, and I think that's just the reality. And I think, part of that is the Obama administration in some ways has codified this, not in some ways, has codified this. But certainly it was also the Bush administration, which sort of desensitized us. Look, part of it was also 9/11, but it was also how we reacted to 9/11. and how we reacted as a country and how the administration reacted. They justified the killing of hundreds of thousands of civilians ultimately on the back of 9/11. That was a political choice. And it was a political choice that was not just made by the administration. It was joined by many Democratic leaders in some respects and many thought leaders. I always think of Thomas Friedman, but there were plenty others who basically, whatever was in the air, justified this invasion of Iraq. And I think to a large extent, everything that came out of that desensitized Americans in many different ways. And it's unfortunate. I mean, and that's a huge understatement.
Yeah, and I think the way it's framed to me is the thing that's always kind of frustrating, because you always hear about dictators who have committed human rights violations, and there's rankings that come out about the worst dictators in the world, and the people who have committed all sorts of crimes against humanity, like extrajudicial killing and some things like that. But it's like,
yeah, and I think I think it is a human rights violation. I think that is
exactly.
What's that? I do think it is a human rights violation, and it doesn't have to be genocide to be a human rights violation. I do think in many respects it also fits the definition of terror, as a policy. I mean, because if you are attacking people just based on their phone calls, how much of a step is that away from, well, you're just attacking people from their broader associations, right? It just doesn't seem to me that far of a distance between attacking people because of who they call, and you don't know the reason why they call. You just see a pattern of phone calls. Attacking people because they're pattern of broader associations and associations to things that have, so it leads you down a fairly slippery slope, and it becomes very difficult to differentiate between the motivations of the people that we call terrorists and the people that we call protecting us from terrorists. But I got to jump. I appreciate the call.